Welcome to Windows on the World. We're going to talk about the Housing and Planning Act. This goes into our series of shows on regeneration, which you should watch, and the re-engineering of society, and London as a major city is being re-engineered in ways that even the most casual observer will have now noticed. So, Piers.
Yes, the fight back against the Housing and Planning Act is increasing, and the problem is a lot of people just don't realise how dangerous it is. But it's now very clear that it is just a tool for the councils to either willingly or unwillingly speed up the social cleansing of a great belt of inner London. For example, the pay-to-stay rule for council tenants means that if that is imposed, which is every sign it will be, any household earning more than £40,000 a year would have to pay 15p in the pound extra on their income towards increased housing, increased rent. And there will be an end of tenancy for life, so new tenancies would only be for 2 years, 5 years or something. In other words, it's step-by-step destruction of social housing and then bringing in the speculators to supposedly provide affordable housing, which, as is crystal clear, is generally speaking not affordable. And more people who are council tenants or housing association tenants are realising that they're not in it by themselves, but there's a great number of other tenants in a ring around London. And the important thing to understand now is it isn't just council tenants that are being trashed, it's also private tenants, also owner-occupiers, also anyone who wants to buy something in London can now no longer afford.
This is a really good point because it does affect everybody. So people who think that they're going to get into the property market need to look into this as well, because part ownership is the big thing. And as you just said, rights are being removed, property rights are being removed. And this is the idea, so that there won't be any lifelong tenancies, and your idea of a freehold is not going to be the same as it was, because most of these things are part ownership. And they can really be knocked down at any time. You can be thrown out at any time with the involvement of the local council now. This is something we were covering a few years ago. But it says in this paper here today, end in sight for the £120,000 homes. So there won't be anything you can buy £120,000 or less in the Greater London area. It says here, buying even the smallest London home for £120,000 or less will be impossible by the end of the year as prices continue to rise across much of the capital. It was forecast today. Only a tiny handful of cramped studios on the eastern and southern fringes of London are still on the market at that price, which is 3.3 times the workers' average pay of £36,258, and there will be none at all within months, according to agents Jackson Stocks. So we're talking about a real poverty culture coming in here. And so we've got like a one-bedroom flat in Tilbury, or one-bedroom flat in Purfleet, one-bedroom flat in Croydon. Now, 10 years ago, nobody would have even thought of living in these places, really. They were commuter belt, but the people who lived there because they had more space.
That's right.
So we're now getting tiny little rabbit warren type flats being built in these satellite areas of London, which is the plan to bring them all in on the train.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I was at a conference last weekend, which was about the what's happening in Southwark, where we had the Southwark Tenants Conference, and some councillors came along there, and it was breathtaking how stupid either they were or they assumed we were. For example, the basic point he was making is the housing crisis can be solved in London if we or people or somebody can just build more houses. Well, actually, no. I put the point to him, look, he was then boasting about how the London Borough of Southwark, instead of forcing a developer to provide social housing, was just going to get more money off them and then use that money for good things in Southwark. Okay, I said, look, all you're doing is aiding and abetting the increase in property prices, land prices, which will then have a knock-on effect to all the other property prices and land prices in Southwark until we are all driven out, not just Southwark, but a great belt around London. In other words, the international property speculating forces are driving this market, and we have to take a stand against those. And those like you who appease them will only end up as part of them. So, people agreed with this point. The meeting said we have to end appeasement with these property speculators and fight for decent housing for all and accountability in all government. And the overriding point made was that we have to now unite across the whole of a ring around London, which you could call the Red Belt, where we've got to fight against this social cleansing in a principled manner. And the main boroughs concerned, for example, are Wandsworth, Lambeth, Southwark, Tower Hamlets, Islington, Camden, Barnet, Kensington, Chelsea and Hammersmith, and they form a ring. And in all those there are monstrous things going on with people just being flung out of London, families and communities being destroyed, and money launderers and people keeping empty properties for profit moving in instead, and it must be stopped.
Yes, and this is going on very, very quickly, isn't it? Within a couple of years everything has changed, and it's changing very dramatically. Areas are being irrevocably changed unless people can take their power back and get the local authority to be their local government, not a devolved form of central government which has ultimate power over them.
We've got to have secure council tenancies has to be the norm and defended absolutely. And any attempts at demolition of council housing must be stopped, and we have to demand referendums locally or ballots locally on anything that goes ahead. And interestingly, despite talking accountability, this is the thing that councillors run away from.
Yes, accountability.
Every time. They don't want it.
Is the big thing, because all of these meetings are held using the same Delphi techniques. They're all trained in the same way. This is a template that's going on in all those boroughs. So it wouldn't matter which one you went to, the same template is being applied, which is really the selling off of everything and the selling out of the people who live in these boroughs, because the people who live in these boroughs will no longer be able to afford to live there unless they've got vast amounts of money. And this is something that they haven't factored in properly. They haven't really thought about as how this is going to work long term. It's based on short-term greed, but it has been a long-term plan. Whether it can work or not is another thing. But what we've got is a very locally very self-satisfied and overpaid people who are making decisions which they don't know the true implications of, but are benefiting them in the short term.
That's right. That's exactly right. It's short-termist greed and long-term, well, it's the end of London as we know it.
Well, it is. So get together out there, look at our shows on the regeneration and housing crisis. There's plenty of stuff on Windows on the World, and there's not many people putting it out there. So do look at those shows and tell everybody about it, and we'll see you soon.